Well, it was actually difficult coming up with one word that could somehow, sum up the idea behind the program. But it seemed as if resonance or resonances or whichever version of the word would be appropriate, because somehow if you bring a fairly disparate choice of pieces and present it as a whole, what you're doing, I mean, it's not even you doing it, it's the pieces. They each shed a light onto their neighbor, and then all of a sudden you come to listening to the piece in a different way because of the one that is before or the one that will follow. And I think that's a very interesting process, the way these pieces interact with each other. And then of course you have the parallels between the Berg and the Liszt in terms of, you could even say expressionism, or in terms of the intensity of the musical drama. You have the operatic parallel between Liszt and Mozart, also, where you could almost play the role of régisseur as you interpret these pieces. And then you have, in a way, this Bartók where you can think, okay, from the point of view of the content, it is incredibly different. But at the same time, if you think about what was going on at the time Bartók was around, in terms of this K&K, fairly recent past for him at that time, it was such a troubled time, a lot of instability, all of these, uncertain borderlines. I think that Bartók found his, if not his hope, at least his comfort in going back to the roots of folkloric music and the fact that, it's the music of the people, no matter what their origins or denominations might be. And I think that's a nice note of optimism at the end of the journey. The Berg sonata was the starting point of the program, but not so much in a conceptual way, more in a sentimental way, because it's a piece that I got to discover when I was 11 years old, owing to the love that my teacher had for that piece. Clearly, the notes were on the music stand, and you've probably seen the partitur of the Berg sonata. It's really something incredible, the density and the richness of markings. And as a matter of fact, my teacher had underlined just about every single marking with different colors, because you have the dynamic markings, the phrasing markings, the tempo indications, and you have sometimes contradictory indications within the same bar, which apply to different notes. I mean, it's really something which is a direct, I find, very much so, which is also why I've chosen to play the Berg with the music. Because I think even if you have a photographic memory, you cannot help but fall into certain automatisms of things that you do as you play the piece. But if you actually look at all of these indications, it's a constant reminder of what he was trying to achieve with this. And one aspect of the piece which fascinated me right away, and at that age, I didn't even really know, okay, which period does this piece belong to? I mean, at 11, that's not something that anybody talks to you about. But I thought, maybe not in those terms at that time, but I remember thinking something along the lines of, well, this must be the pinnacle of Romanticism, because there was something so incredibly intense and so tormented, and these harmonies were so fremd. I mean, there was something so otherworldly about the resonances that piece evoked for me. It was really very, very strong, and something incredibly pure too. This is what's, it's a very skillful piece in its sort of reduced dimension. Still perfectly honors the sonata form, but you have really the feeling that the soul of Berg is speaking through his breath. Well, yes, for me the choice of this Mozart sonata is, it's for sure not random. I mean, it's the most intensely dramatic of all sonatas that he wrote, for sure. And what I find very interesting, and how I find that it connects to the Liszt especially, is this notion of fate. There's something very Beethovenian already in this particular Mozart sonata. You have this notion of, this dialogue between fate and the imploring human somehow. There's something very poignant about that expression. So So it could have been only this sonata and no other in this program, for sure. The Liszt sonata, apart from being on the surface one of the war horses of the piano repertoire, and I mean this has to be mentioned still because it's this program is also a celebration of the instrument. It's it's 4 totally different languages, and it's really an homage to the versatility of the piano as an instrument of musical expression. That's, I think, something very special. And the Liszt is what fascinates me the most. And of course, many stories and meanings have been ascribed to the dramaturgy of the piece. But I prefer to leave that to the imagination of the listener. I always think that if you come up with too precise a scenario for what is going on, you actually limit yourself. But it really spans the entire range of human emotions, but also non-human emotions. If you think about this sardonic, this sort of expression of the ever-tempting devil, which of course lives in every single one of us, but sometimes also simply around. So it's something extremely. It has magnetic power. Its intensity is absolutely pervasive. It's something that gets into your skin and doesn't let go. And what I find the most fascinating about the piece is this gift of metamorphosis, what he's able to do in terms of transforming the motifs constantly. And what I find also touching about that is that it's so incredibly skillful from a composition point of view, but it's there's no trick, there's no gimmick. Every composer has its gimmicks, really, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in the case of Liszt, no matter how masterful this piece is, it's still extremely primal, and that's really what that's what moves you when you get it, and what makes you stop and think. Is its raw power.